Good morning, everyone. This is Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, and we are here for another Monday morning edition of Beyond the Soundbite, where we talk about all things U.S. immigration. So, I like to dive right in. And the first thing I want to talk to y'all about is some people that currently have ESTA, which is the way that you go online if you are from a visa waiver country, and it is not a visa, but it does let the government know that you desire to come into the country. You have to get ESTA, and then you can travel pretty freely in and out of the US. So some people are going to have their ESTAs revoked. So we've had a few different things that have come up recently, so I want to kind of run through them all for you. Citizens of nations where the U.S. has designated that nation as a state sponsor of terrorism are ineligible for the visa waiver program. So in this case, we're going to use visa waiver and ESTA pretty interchangeably. So citizens of nations that have been, where the U.S. has designated them to be state sponsors of terrorism are ineligible for the visa waiver program, meaning those individuals will not be allowed to get ESTA. If they apply for ESTA, it will be denied. Also, citizens of visa waiver countries are ineligible to use ESTA to enter the U.S. if they have visited a country that has been designated as a state sponsor of terrorism, we'll call them SSTs for short, or they are a dual national with an SST. In 2021, the U.S. designated Cuba as an SST, so as a state sponsor of terrorism. Last week, on the 6th of July of 2023, DHS updated the ESTA application to reflect these specific changes. So what does that mean? It means that if you currently have ESTA and you have visited an SST, meaning a country that the U.S. has designated as a state sponsor of terrorism, or you are a dual citizen with an SST. In both of those instances, if you have simply visited an SST or you're a dual national with an SST, your ESTA will be revoked. You will receive notification of this, but it will be revoked. So it doesn't mean that you cannot come into the US. It simply means that you cannot use ESTA to do so. You will need to go to the US consulate. You will need to apply for a non-immigrant visa to enter the US. It does not mean that your non-immigrant visa will automatically be denied. It simply means that you, according to the rules, now are no longer eligible to enter the US using your ESTA. So if that is you, please take a look at whatever your travel dates are. If you're in the middle of travel, that issue needs to be looked at as well. There are some exceptions. With every rule comes exceptions, right? So the exception is if you are a military member or you're a government official and you are traveling to an SST on official orders or business of the government, then you may keep your ESTA and travel in and out of the US on ESTA. So it really needs to be military member or government official traveling on official orders or official government business. So Cuba specific, there is no exception for visiting Cuba on behalf of an international organization or dual nationality with Cuba and a visa waiver country. So if you fit in that particular circumstance, you have visited or plan to visit Cuba on behalf of an international organization, or you are a dual national with Cuba, your visa waiver, your ESTA, will be revoked. So if you have any questions about that, if you find yourself to be a dual national with a country that the U.S. has designated as a state sponsor of terrorism, you're not quite sure what that means. You're not quite sure if you can travel in and out. You're not quite sure if your ESTA is going to be denied based on your travel history. feel free to contact the office. We can get you set up for a consultation and we can figure it out together, okay? We can help you figure that out. The next thing I want to talk about is USCIS is going a little bit more digital, y'all, and I am kind of excited about it. So USCIS has recently said that they have some capabilities that should be released soon. So they're not active yet. They should be released soon, and they are going to handle some of the requests that they get over and over and over again by people calling the toll-free customer service line. They're going to move some of those requests to being able to be handled online. So it will free up all sorts of time that people are now spending on hold online trying to get to someone to help them. So we are looking at getting online biometrics rescheduling. So if for some reason you can't meet the time that you have been scheduled for your biometrics, hopefully soon we can be able to reschedule those online. They have said that you can only use the online twice to reschedule your biometrics. I tell my clients, move things around to the extent possible, move things around to get to your biometrics appointment and to get to your interview appointments. You have spent a ton of time trying to get this benefit, trying to get something out of the immigration service. So help them kind of help you. So if at all possible, attend your original biometrics, appointment, attend your original interview appointment. But if you can't, we should hopefully soon have the capability where you can reschedule your biometrics online. They are rolling out the ability to change your address online. In order to do that, you will need a My USCIS account in order to do that, because they will tie your new address directly to your My USCIS account. So that is also good news. An online appointment request form. So that's only going to be for very, very, very specific requests. So two of them that we know of are going to be for the stamps that tell someone that you are a green card holder or a permanent resident. So they're called ADIT stamps or I-551 stamps. But it's basically a stamp that they put in your passport that says this person, even though they may not have their physical card or their physical card has expired, they are still a green card holder in the government system. So hopefully we should be able to book those appointments online so that people can go into the local office if need be, as well as emergency advance parole documents. So advance parole is your travel document. So hopefully we'll be able to get those two appointment types so that we can get those requests in online. It is not an appointment scheduler. So you're not going to see a calendar where you get to pick days and then, go into the office. It's an appointment request form. So a little bit different, but a crucial difference. The other thing that they're talking about rolling out for us is a text ahead situation where instead of, again, sitting on the phone for, a long time and trying to get to that right tier 2 person who can help you, that right tier 2 officer, they're looking at putting in a texting feature where we can receive text messages in order to help facilitate the movement of that process. So I, for one, am super excited that USCIS is taking more and more steps to go digital, do things online, as opposed to all the paper and the phone calls. So I'm super excited about that. The next thing I want to talk to you about are sometimes, this is very unfortunate, but sometimes it happens, sometimes officers that we deal with in terms when we are, working with DHS, do things that they shouldn't be doing. And, I'm talking about big things, y'all. I'm talking about big things. I'm not talking about you think they were mean to you or, or they denied your case that, whatever. I'm talking about like big things. So the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, they have released a web-based form that can be completed online and submitted directly to their office about possible violations of civil rights, civil liberties, and human rights by DHS employees, contractors. So again, I'm not talking about small things. I'm talking about really, really big things. And so, these are things that need to be addressed. The agency by releasing this web complaint form, wants to get them addressed. And so one more way that is easy and accessible for everybody to file a complaint, we now have that. So if you think that has happened to you, there is a form that you can now complete online. We've seen a little bit of this, the next topic. We've seen a little bit of this last week about possible changes to the U.S. citizenship test, which some argue will make it harder for individuals who are not confident with their English speaking abilities. So the Immigration Service is looking to change the English test, the English portion of the citizenship interview, I should say. Instead of simply judging and evaluating the applicant's ability to speak English during the interview, they're looking at changing that piece of the puzzle to instead showing people a picture and asking that individual, asking the applicant to describe what is happening in the picture. So let's say there's a picture of a basketball game or a baseball game or a NASCAR race or people having a picnic, something like that. And then the officer says, please describe what's happening in this picture. That is very open-ended. It is very broad. And for someone whose English is a little shaky or they are nervous at the interview on top of their English being a little bit shaky, that could be absolutely terrifying. And they, may get super nervous. They may lose their words. Words that they know, right? And so that may make it a little bit more difficult for them. I personally feel for that person because, I go live with you guys. I lose my words all the time, right? Like I'm like, oh, was that word I was thinking of? So trying to rally like that for some people may be really, really difficult. So we'll see what happens with the test. The other portion of the test that they're looking to change and tweak is the civics portion of the test. Currently, the civics portion of the test is you are provided all of the possible questions for the civics portion of the test on the USCIS website. It is there for anyone to obtain. And the officer asks you those questions and you provide the officer with the answer. Some people are arguing that that is memorization and you're not really learning the material. Okay. So what the Immigration Service is considering doing is instead of simply making that a question and an answer, they're considering making that portion of the civics exam multiple choice. Some are arguing that multiple choice is harder because you have to have a much deeper knowledge base of all of the answers, the possible answers, the choices that are provided on the exam. So all this to say, the Immigration Service is considering tweaking the citizenship exam. We will see what happens. If this is something that you are concerned about because maybe you don't feel like you're a good test taker, maybe you don't feel like your English is good enough to, in a sense, freestyle from a photograph, then now is the time for you to file, right? If these potential changes freak you out, now is the time to file, okay? The next thing I want to talk about is Florida Senate Bill 1718. We know that it went into effect July 1 of this year. The rule is very specific to Florida, but I want to talk about it because it could potentially have national implications or implications outside of the state of Florida. So if you are an employer in Florida and you have 25 or more employees, you must now be using E-Verify to check the employment eligibility of your new hires. E-Verify is a government-run system. It helps employers figure out whether or not their employees are authorized to work in the United States. E-Verify pings from Social Security and DHS databases to confirm work authorization. The E-Verify ecosystem has systems in place where if they come back to an employer and they say this social, for instance, if they say this social security number that you've provided to us doesn't match the name that you have provided to us, there is a process by which the employer can go through and work with the employer, work with the employee to see if there was an error potentially in the Social Security system, in the DHS database, or whether there was an error by the individual. Okay, so that is now currently in place. Employers found to be not in compliance will have 30 days to comply. If they are still not in compliance, they will receive a $1,000 fine daily until they are in compliance. So this is not a rule that doesn't have any teeth to it. It is a $1,000 daily fine if you are not in compliance. If you are not sure how to register for E-Verify, if you're not sure about E-Verify, or you've come and run into a few snags, feel free to reach out to our office. We can help you with your E-Verify questions and issues. State agencies, Florida state agencies, can end contracts with companies that are out of compliance. So if you are a government contractor in the state of Florida, you could potentially lose your government contracts, okay? And Florida will invalidate, i.e. not recognize, driver's licenses that have been issued by other states to individuals that are undocumented. So this is what we're looking at. This all came into effect. All became effective July 1. I suspect we will see an increase in ICE raids at work sites. I suspect we will see an increase in I-9 audits of companies. Please understand, just because you are a company that is, say, 24 employees or less, doesn't mean that you don't have to complete your I-9s. If you are a company of 25 or more, just because you now have to be compliant with E-Verify does not mean that you get out of being compliant for the I-9s. I-9s are across the board. So you want to make sure that you are complying with SB 1718 if you're 25 employees or more by registering for and using E-Verify, but you also want to make sure that you are doing the regular I-9 compliance. If you are not, and you're not quite sure what I'm saying when I say I-9 compliance, then we should have a conversation. Because I do anticipate more audits to come, especially in the state of Florida. The last thing I want to talk to you all about is another national interest waiver tip. So you all have been sending me messages and calling about the national interest waiver green card. And the national interest waiver green card is a second employment preference based green card. It can be sponsored by your employer, or you can self-sponsor. It is second preference, which means that there is a base requirement of having a master's degree or higher. If you don't have a master's degree or higher, you need to show that you are an individual of exceptional ability. Then you need to show that your proposed position, your proposed job, your proposed career has both substantial merit and national importance to the United States, that you are well positioned to advance your proposed endeavor, meaning that you have the educational and the experience qualifications. If you are trying to start a new business based on national interest waiver, you have a business plan. The Immigration Service needs to know how you are going to be continuing on in this career, in this job, if a green card is issued. And third, we need to show that on balance, it is in the country's best interest to waive the general EB2 second preference employment-based category requirements of having an employer sponsor you and going through the labor certification process, which includes advertising for qualified U.S. citizens, okay? So that is EB2 green card in a nutshell, The tip that I have today is that you must be able to provide documents that back up the substantial merit, national importance, that you are well positioned for this proposed endeavor. The Immigration Service is not just going to take my word for it. Trust me, they're not just going to take my word for it, and they're not just going to take your word for it. So if you say that you have been the judge of others and that you have 25 years, in your particular industry, or you're working on this groundbreaking, cutting edge thing or idea, we've got to be able to submit documents, pieces of paper that back up what you are claiming. It cannot be where you say to me, oh, Carol, it's all in my head, but I got this. It may be all in your head, but we need to show it on paper via documents. That is super important. I have that conversation with all of my clients because sometimes they have these wonderful ideas and they're doing these great things, but it's all in their head or it's all very, very technical speak. So we've got to be able to break it down and put it on paper and show documents. So if you are interested in applying for a national interest waiver, you want to know if you qualify, feel free to reach out to my office. We are happy to get you set up for a consultation. I can be reached, my office can be reached at 954-903-1337, or you can always click the link in the bio. This is all I have for you this fabulous Monday morning. Have a great Monday and a wonderful rest